Hi, I'm Judy Bradt, CEO of Summit Insight. I'm here with my friends, Will Randolph of Think Acquisition and Kevin Hoey, who's coming at us from Northern Virginia. Hi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're here because we're talking about something called Come Together for Government, for GovCons, Conversations with Contracting Officers. And the three of us are just gonna relax and tell you what the heck we're doing and talk about it a little bit. Sort of like in episode 0 of a podcast, the host says, here's what this podcast is about. And we're launching something that's really different, but about probably the single most important challenge that government contractors face. And we're going to tell you what it is and how we're going to help and how you can participate. So that's it. I want to give you a sense of who we are and what we're doing and why. So, Will, how did you come to be allied with Summit Insight, and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. So this is one of the great stories that I love to tell, is that Judy had the opportunity of meeting you probably over a year ago now, doing some government contracting work from a standpoint of talking to small businesses in the government contracting space. I am a retired senior executive from federal service. I'm a contracting officer by trade, and I retired in 2016 and then did a little consulting work, and then started doing my own thing in the training and development space in 2019. Little did I know that there was going to be a lot of demand for information from the other side of the table, how water flowed on the government side. So I have found myself in this space, not intentionally, but I'm loving it from a standpoint of helping and engaging with small government contractors that are either incubating, growing to some degree, or even trying to scale their businesses to larger businesses. So I'm just excited, love the opportunity, and love the opportunity to work with you, Judy, and Kevin, and Summit Insight.
You guys are one of the best things that happened to me, building relationships with both of you in 2020. When I was trying to reshape my programs and offerings and be of more service, one of the experiments I did in 2019 was to involve people who weren't me, to say, hey, I don't know everything. Why don't I see if I can get some smart friends, former contracting officers, and build in some practice conversations between my clients and the people in my programs and people who had been on the other side of the desk. And after having a really, honestly, a hard, scary, you're trying a lot of things and concepts, when I talked to people and said, what was most valuable? What did you like the most? That number one thing people love was, we love talking to the former contracting officer. And I had to kind of put my ego on the shelf and go, oh, good thing I don't do anything useful, and say, hey, how cool is this? This all works together, theory and practice. So Kevin, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your experiences in both public and private sector. You've got a completely different mix.
Sure, Judy, thanks very much. Appreciate the chance to be here today with you and Will. So my background is a little bit different. So I spent almost 30 years on active duty in the Marine Corps, and I was on some acquisition teams when I was at Headquarters Marine Corps in the early 2000s. And so I did see kind of the product of some of the small businesses associated with government contracting at that stage, but I was still pretty much uneducated in terms of what that process may have looked like to get it to that point. When I retired from active duty, I then took a position with a large defense contractor, and I spent about 15 years with them. And I, like Will, recently retired from that position, working on both the capture side and the business development side. And during that time frame, I had met Judy probably 10 years ago, way back in your days when you were active with some small business forums that I was familiar with through the company that I engaged with. And the idea was that I took an interest in small businesses because I realized they were a key success to my large business prime role in bringing successful teams to the government to address issues, problems, and provide solutions. So in that time frame, I was involved with the Missile Defense Agency Small Business Council. I've also been involved with an organization called The Catalyst, or the Women's Business Center of North Alabama, devoted specifically to enabling and assisting those small businesses with ways they can engage with federal contracting officials, with DoD contracting officers, with the ability to deliver some of the capabilities that they offer in a more structured manner. What we've realized is they need access to those who have the experience, who have the knowledge, who have been there before them, and can help assist them along the way with some of the challenges they inevitably are going to face as small businesses. So enjoyed my opportunity with Judy about 7 or 8 months ago to become one of her top guns, and realized in that first engagement, Lord knows I didn't want to be compared to the folks in the movie, but the idea being that you've seen some of the challenges and you can recognize some of the patterns and can assist a small business with what's critical in the moment as they start to grow their business beyond their current footprint. So it's been very rewarding for me to be a part of Summit Insight and to engage with small businesses who can benefit from the experience that I have.
Come Together is born of the pandemic experience. And one of the things that really impressed me in 2020, we really saw what people were made of when life turned upside down. People did innovative, generous things, brought people together, had impromptu briefings. Luann Brossman put together at a daily ideation session with for the government contracting marketing community. People really came out and tried to do things to support each other in unusual ways. Come Together was born of that experience and evolved over last year. But what I wanted to do was to bring together government contractors who wanted to face their greatest fear and their biggest challenge. And here's what that is. I've done every time I bring together clients and my community for a webinar, when I'm a guest on a webinar, often I'll ask, what's the biggest challenge you face? And time and again, that boils down to get in front of the buyer, get in front of the right people sooner. And a lot of the time, somebody will come to me and say, hey, just open your Rolodex, set me up meetings, I'll do fine. And guys, when you do that, what often happens? Is that really all it takes, or is there something more?
Oh, I think there's definitely something more, Judy, from a standpoint of I have never, and I've been on for 26 years, I was on the receiving end of those meetings, and you can tell when the homework hasn't been done from a standpoint of that. And even simply as the nerves get you, if you haven't run the cycles, if you haven't done the prep and done the kind of the pre-gaming, if you will, your nerves will get you, and you won't get to the things that are very, very important, like asking for resources, asking for for contacts, and asking for the sale sometimes. So it is those activities that are necessary, those pre-game activities of thinking about first doing the homework on your federal buyer, and then doing the pre-gaming activity to think about how do you want this meeting to run, and what are the desired outcomes, and stick to the plan of getting to the desired outcome. Sometimes that's information, sometimes that's access to an individual or an office, but oftentimes it is simply getting your name recognition and getting you known, planting the seed of your company into the mind of your federal buyer. So, and there's a way and a strategy to go about doing that.
Got it. Kevin, so much of the hard, scary, fuzzy unknown is really the human part. You were behind the federal desk, finishing your career as a Marine Corps colonel. Will behind the desk for 26 years, over a quarter century. Talk a little bit about the plain ordinary human to human piece. One of the big rocks in the road is, what do I say? How do I start a conversation with a stranger? You've had conversations with literally thousands of strange contractors, people who've never heard of you before. How does that start, Kevin?
So I think Will brings out some great points, and it's important, for the outcome of the process to be focus of effort and to do the homework. But one of the things we tried to emphasize was it's important to be comfortable in what you're selling. A lot of times when we would start these engagements, I couldn't tell whether the small business was shopping for a contract, or selling to me in terms of a capability that they offered. And while we oftentimes say, what are you selling? And somebody will recite a list of technologies or services. I'm not sure that all of them recognize that there needs to be some approach that's unique to that individual business in terms of having done their homework, as Will suggests, to frame what they're offering really is. If we've been in interviews, we've discussed with small businesses, we'll sometimes get a recitation of a list of things that they do. We try to encourage them to tell stories associated something that's going to be remembered, something that's going to stick in that federal official's mind and that contracting officer's mind. To frame your offering or what you're selling around a success story usually is what sticks the most in my mind. It's able to do that as part of your homework, as part of your prep, rather than just listing NAICS codes or listing domains that you have expertise in, is going to make a much more lasting impression on the human on the other side of the table than just a recitation of what you've done, where you've gone, and what contract vehicles you hold.
Well, listening to how the things that each of you is saying come together, the thing that strikes me is that if you've done what Will said, clear, solid, consistent list of homework, then Kevin, doesn't that make it easier for the person who's the business owner to pick an idea, a story, a concept, something short that will catch the interest of the person they want to start a conversation with? Does that sound right?
Sure. Fundamentally, and we talk about this a lot, is you're offering solutions. And so solutions connotes that there's a problem. And I think what Will is walking us towards is, how can you help that federal individual solve a problem that they face today, that they see, or maybe a problem in the future that they don't see yet? And not because they haven't focused on it, it just hasn't come on their radar yet. And so when we turn to industry to assist the government in providing solutions to problems, it's the problems that are not only apparent, but those problems that may not yet be apparent that you can help us with.
Got it. So, you were a part of half a dozen of our come together discussions last year, both of you. And when you think back to what we did when we gathered together, and what was different about our online gatherings versus the webinars and trainings that other people were doing? What did you notice was different?
So Judy, I think the biggest difference is it was an exchange. Oftentimes in the webinar world, it's push, 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 push content. And then at the end, if you want to engage with me, do some other thing, hit this button. But what I enjoyed about the come togethers was we were actually not only encouraging, but on some level, demanding engagement in the room, because it is all about getting the reps in. It's just like going to the gym. We don't wait until we get strong to then go to the gym. We go to the gym to put the reps in to get strong. So the goal there is really the engagement, and every engagement counts, whether it's in front of your buyer or it's a mock in front of your buyer, or it's even talking to colleagues and friends about telling your story. Back to, I love, Kevin's language about telling your story, your solutioning story. Every time you can tell that is another rep in the gym that makes the story stronger and makes your ability to deliver stronger. So I think the come togethers from 2020 were really about engagement, conversations, and exchange.
Yeah, those things get that easier the more you do them. I was, as the new year begins, the gyms are full of people with New Year's resolutions. And I have a really mixed history with New Year's resolutions. I remember the first year, I must have been 9 or 10. My mom introduced me to the concept of New Year's resolutions. I'm going, okay, tell me all about this. And going, well, this is what it is. And I had exactly the same crash and burn experience that many adults have year after year. Okay, there's a resolution. Oh, plop, I failed. And it was really not a good introduction to understanding what goals are, and that staying engaged and continuing to, as you said, put the reps in makes all the difference. And so a friend of mine was emailing me about just getting over the idea of exercising in public, getting over the idea that everybody's looking at you. And I wrote her back and said, Lindsay, everybody else is hoping nobody's looking at them. And so, but the other thing, and another friend of mine chimed in and said, hey, and you never know who else you're going to inspire. And so to show up and practice in public is hard. And one of the things that we do with Come Together is practice those conversations, and not just do the problem solving, but you both of you have actually done a little bit of role play. And again, role play scares me. Why somebody might watch me fail in public, but it's a whole lot better to do that in a safe place with somebody who said, oh no, start it over. Okay, now you've got doing the reps, making sure your form is correct. One of you says, perfect practice makes perfect. Is that, Will, is that the thing that you tell me?
That was Kevin.
That's Kevin. Thank you. Credit where credit is due. Talk more about that, Kevin, and how that applies to learning to have the conversations.
So tying these points together, what we've experienced on the webinars is this pivot towards the technology-based access to government individuals kind of changes the dynamic, doesn't it? I mean, the webinar is a push, and that's exactly right. And one of the things we're working at WBCNA in Huntsville is giving individuals.
What's WBCNA?
The Women's Business Center in North Alabama, called the Catalyst, is to give individual companies a chance to do this practice in public, so that it's not a rigorous, stilted, continuously the same pitch every time, but you've at least tailored it to that particular audience or that particular customer, and you have done enough reps so that if there is some kind of a change or some kind of an altering of the environment, you can make a successful pivot on your message. But as you indicate, unless you've practiced this in public and done it through technology and gotten some feedback, you're not going to have it at a level of perfection that's going to succeed, I think, in describing what Will, positioned as the outcomes you desire when you meet with a government acquisition or a contracting official. And when I coached the high school hockey team, we'd do it and do it and do it. But coach, we scored. You're going to do it till you do it perfectly, right? Mm-hmm. And so it takes a little bit of human understanding and a little bit of empathy and an experienced coach to tell them what they've said and what we've heard, to make sure that they're on message and to make sure that they're hitting the key points rather than just giving me a blurb. I've been in business for 30 years and I've done IT and I have experience with it. Okay, but that's maybe not relevant in this moment, in that particular conversation, to the problem or solution that government official is looking for. So you're exactly right. You have to practice, you have to do it in public, and you have to be willing to accept feedback.
Yeah, 80-20 is just such a valuable principle in so many ways. If anything, you guys have both done procurement of really large, complex systems. And if any system is consistently, you're running at over 80% of capacity, you're running into the area where you're more likely to fail if you're in that top 20% of capacity. Does that sound right, with as a rule of thumb?
Yeah, I think that applies. Yeah.
And so if you want to be able to have 80% of your brain space, you've got good practice behind what are my things, what am I about, what are all the things I can draw on. You want to have all of that using up a minimum amount of your active brain space, so that you've got, and so you're able to really, really listen and then draw from all the pieces that you've got and put the right ones into the conversation. When we do come together, one of the things I'd learned is that I started out with the concept of open office hours, and people, yeah, well, what's the topic? What's it about? So we're picking topics each month. We're going to be, we've started out in February, March, and April. We have a topic that is going to be frame our discussion, and we're inviting you to show up, and when you register, bring a situation or a question that you have about what's happening in your sector of the federal arena. And so our theme for February, and that's going to be February 10th. We're doing these on Wednesdays, I think. Look at my calendar here. Yep, second Wednesday. Wednesday, February 10th is stand out by how you engage. If there's a watchword for what we're doing, it's engagement. My friend Eileen Kent talks about the idea that if you were in a crowded room, and we're going to be in those crowded rooms again, and you spotted just exactly the person that you were in love with at first sight, you're going to walk across the room, make a beeline for them, go down on one knee and offer up the hardware on first glance? No, of course not. You'd cringe to watch someone do that. And yet, as business owners, often that's exactly what we think we're going to do. And we really have to stop and relax and woo people. And so the theme for February 10th is stand out by how you engage. I want, when the two of you think about the idea of a first meeting, a first conversation, when you were in the contracting organization, what kinds of things would get your attention in a positive way and inspire you to want to return a phone call or have a conversation after first contact? Kevin?
So a couple of instances in my mind where I was working with small businesses kind of jump out. And one of the things we've started to use, and I'm not necessarily trying to put a label on it, but it's the digital marketing experience is very different, right? We've been PowerPointed to death. We've been talked to death. We've been capability statemented to death. But one of the individuals who came in talked to me when I was a program director in my previous company, and he had a solution, and he sat down at the desk, and we didn't really have a lot of time over a cup of coffee, but he pulled out his iPad and he started describing the problem that we were facing. He showed me what the environmental challenges were associated with the technology deployment. And then he showed me some outcomes and some data that were relevant associated with the problem set that we were trying to solve. And I recognized immediately, just in this about 20-minute flip through the different screens, and they weren't necessarily PowerPoint slides, but they were illustrating to me that he understood the challenges that I faced, as well as the environment that we were working in, and had already produced a solution that was workable. I can't tell you that we went back to him because he was a little too expensive, but the power of that moment and the limited opportunity and his ability to focus directly on the problem and the solution just impressed me immensely in terms of what I was looking for from a small business partner at that particular juncture.
So, so homework completed related to this problem at hand.
Correct. And it didn't necessarily involve discussions about broader corporate goals or customer objectives. It was really focused on that challenge that we were seeing in front of us, and that allowed me to recognize that he had already sorted through all the challenges that we were going to see and had answers to some of those problems for us. Because it's never easy, right? The technology is the easy part, as we say, right? It's the politics, it's the funding, it's the contractual limitations, it's dealing with the government officials and the other contractors that are working in support of the common goal that you have to kind of operate within that environment. So it's too simplistic to say, I have a technical solution and I can make it work for you, unless you've been able to address all those other environmental factors associated with that technology. Wow.
It will. What for you would really inspire you to say, oh, this is somebody I need to talk to? What would tip it over? What kind of door, what opened up the door for you?
So I think there are two things, and I've been wrestling with one of them, kind of over the last couple of weeks. It is these four words: how can I help? Okay, those four words. How can I help? Now, some people put those words in order of, they come in asking a question. How can I help? So for the federal buyer, you've just given them homework. Okay, you're trying to help them and you've just given them homework, wanting them to tell you, how can I help? Okay, let's just switch those words around just a little bit. How I can help. It changes the entire dynamic. Now that says you've done homework. You've done homework on the organization. Kevin put these couple of words: the challenge and the environment. You've done homework on the environment, on the challenge and environment, and you're coming with a solution. How I can help. It's the same four words, but when you move them around, it changes you're having a totally different conversation. And then the second piece, Judy, is getting as soon as possible in the conversation to allow the federal buyer to just talk. Okay,
All
we
right.
often want to present, but just to give them the space. It's almost like, you know, when I was I'm dating myself a little bit, but and we just came past Christmas, and I remember the year I received my GI Joe with the Kung Fu grip, and it had a cord that you just pull the cord, and GI Joe would just say its thing. What you want to do is you want to set up the meeting in such a fashion that you can just pull the cord of your government buyer and just let them talk, because that's where the gold is. You can help and shape your conversation by what they say. So those are kind of the two things that I've been thinking about, Judy, over the last couple of weeks. Is that there's some framing on how do you show up in the room, and then as soon as possible, stage or orchestrate a way to stop talking and let your government buyer talk.
Wow, that is so powerful. It's a good thing you don't work on your vacation and you just sort of think you never stop thinking acquisition. My goodness. Oh, so in order to be able to get, one of the things that slips off out of the idea of a conversation is the idea that you're also talking to what I call your federal human. We're all humans in the federal arena. And so the person that is your buyer, and I use that as a really broad term because there's really players at 5 different layers that have different roles in acquisition. And we talk about those with our clients, and we talk about those in our sessions. You're also dealing with a real human being, and somewhere between just talking business and hello, here's the mission, ba, 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 and somehow spilling the guts of what on earth is going on in somebody's life, there's an appropriate sweet spot to connect with somebody as another human being. Now that is scary, tricky space. Will, I want to start with you and then move back to Kevin. What are some ways to just sort of relax a little, not get all wrapped around the axle and I got to pitch my stuff at this person, but to just connect with them a little bit as a human being? This is real basic federal human relation stuff. How do you start? What kinds of things make it a little easier to have a conversation with somebody you're recognizing they're just another human like you?
Yeah, Judy, you said the magic word is just another human. Regardless of what's on the shoulder, what's on the collar, or how much the tie or or dress suit costs. It's just another human. And when you think about those humans are responsible for delivering value to citizens. So I go all the way to the end. No matter what's happening in a given office, they all have a responsibility of providing value and delivering and unlocking value to their departments, to their agencies, and then ultimately to the American taxpayer and citizen. So when you think about it, that always works for me. It's like, we're on the same team. Okay, we're all on the same team. We're trying to accomplish the same things. So that was always the level setting for me that says, we're on the same team. We're looking at it from a different vantage point, but in the end, we both want to do the exact same thing. And in the end, to unlock value for the American citizen. So when I think about it in that context, it's that's calm, we're okay. We're on the same team. We have different, often motivations and incentives, but the outcomes are literally the exact same thing.
So the common value of service, to the citizens,
Yes.
service to the mission of this country.
How may I serve?
So Kevin, what's your thinking about just sort of the human to human connection, which can feel unfamiliar and ooky when you're talking to somebody trying to get through a conversation for the first time?
I think it's appreciation for where they are. I think it plays on Will's thoughts there. Somebody who's put in, 30 years in uniform or 30 years in government service, they've paid their dues. I mean, they've weathered a lot of storms. They've been through an awful lot of training. They've been through education. They've been through challenges associated with the dynamics of working in the federal space or working in the military. I mean, so one of the clues that we get is, just being in the environment with them. I mean, are there college degrees hung on the wall? Do we have some association with that? In the South, we're very fond of wearing our colors on Fridays before football. And you'll see everybody walking through the halls in Tennessee or Alabama or Auburn kind of colors. And, you know, maybe there's an appreciation for somebody who served in the military for a period of time and then transitioned to government service. You know, they continue that concept of wanting to be those who delivered value for the citizens. I mean, so I think just reaching out on that person-to-person level, as you spent time in uniform, where did you serve? Where were you from? I mean, those are very easy intros to be able to establish some of that dialogue, but I, in a sense of not just gaining knowledge, but a sense of appreciation for what those individuals have been through to get where they are today.
Wonderful. And I really also, what Will talked about, and these are exactly the kinds of things that we're going to be talking about in our sessions as well. Developing each of us, developing our unique prep checklist. I know I have one before I talk to a business owner when I've set up a call. But let me think here, 2.1 million federal employees are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn alone. If you're thinking of LinkedIn as just a staffing platform, in the federal arena, think again. Odds are good that the person that you are trying to connect with, the people in the organization you're trying to connect with, have a profile on LinkedIn. That means that when you are starting the conversation, you can take a look and say, how long have they been in this organization? Oh, they only got there 6 months ago. Wow. How is that person gonna feel in that organization? What's gonna be going on for them? Well, let's see, they probably don't wanna make any mistakes. It's gonna be really very top of mind. They wanna be successful. They may still be learning things. If somebody's been there 9 years, or somebody has been there 20 years, they're going to be at a different point in their career. You may see that they've been an acquisition professional in many different organizations. You may have different things you can ask them about. If you see that they're civilian, but they've been in military service, you can see what branch of service. Have a couple of questions. One of the questions that I like to ask can be, which of your billets or which of your assignments did you enjoy the most? That's always a fun one because people have a place they loved or a job that they really loved. And so not trying to go and make a sale in one conversation, but to have what I call a micro engagement goal. Have a list of small things. Are those the journey between contact and contract happens a tiny step at a time, and to start to think about what would make this conversation a win, not just for me, but also for the person I'm talking with. And so the 3 topics that we're going to be talking about in our come together sessions in February and March and April. February is all about stand out by how you engage. And so we're going to be talking in February about the experience of initial contact and the kind of experience that first impression someone has from that first conversation. And so that's going to be the topic of the February session. In March, the theme is 15 magic minutes, how to really to master the industry outreach meeting. And so, Will, what are the top 3 mistakes that people make in that 15-minute industry outreach meeting?
Oh, top 3. I think first, and we've tapped on it a couple of things, is not having done the homework or not being able to demonstrate that they've done the homework in the room. I think that's probably my top 1. The second is not being crystal clear on what the outcome of the meeting is.
Not having a clear ask.
Not a clear ask, or even just an outcome. Here's what I have shared with some of my colleagues is the outcome of the meeting at the highest level is for that individual to want to talk to you again. Okay.
I love it.
That's it. That's it. It's like, if I call, if I text, if I follow up with an email, that person is willing and interested to continue the conversation. If you accomplish that at the end of the meeting, you're well past 50%. And you haven't sold a thing, but that the communication channel is open. So
Yeah.
that's in my opinion, that's probably the second thing that I've seen is that
Yep.
we go after the wrong thing. We want to go sell something. Okay. And rarely does the sale happen in the 15-minute, in the first contact 15-minute call. It's like, here's the contract already prepped, signed here. It doesn't work that way.
No, just stop. Dream a different dream. What's your number 3 real quick? Third mistake and what not to do.
So I think third mistake is simply not being focused on the human, on the individual. Okay. Again, back to selling. We want to get to that it's transactional, not relationship based. Build the relationship, the transaction will come.
Awesome. Kevin, top three, what not to do, top 3 mistakes of industry outreach.
Let me just twist it a little bit. So I would say value the opportunity, create that environment and that dialogue so that every moment is a part of that dialogue that Will's describing, and you're building on that relationship. So building that value in there is more than just kind of asking for something or looking for a contract. It's building on information that you may be able to use in a different manner later on, right? You're investing what you're doing there. I think the second piece would be respect the time, right? They've given up minutes or an hour, and you need to be completely appreciative of those opportunities. And I went with a large defense contractor for 15 years. Government engagement had a lot of focus. That wasn't, I'm just going to swing by. We would get to version 12 or 13 of briefings. White papers would go through extreme levels of scrutiny because that's a doorway to others as well, right? It may not end with that government individual. So respect the time and value that opportunity. I think the third thing is conversations don't always go the way we planned them. Projects don't always go the way we planned them. You have to be able to pivot, if necessary, to other parallel opportunities that you may be familiar with or be willing to introduce them to somebody else who can help them solve that problem. One of the greatest measures of respect is to say, I don't do that kind of work, but I know somebody who does, and I can introduce you to them. So those would be the 3 things that I would be looking at, because meetings don't always come off the way we think they're going to come off. To be able to value that opportunity, respect that time, and pivot towards another opportunity.
And being sensitive to just listening to what's coming up, or just if somebody seems distracted or weary, to be, as you get into the conversation, you get to know the little bit to say, how are you doing? What's going on with you? We are still in times of extreme stress, and you cannot possibly tell what's going on with somebody. So even just to say, how are you? How's your family? How was the holiday? How was the holiday break? And just to listen and take the time is one piece. I loved what you said, Kevin, about having that you are more than what you do. You are your ecosystem. You are your Rolodex in the old terms. I don't know what the more modern term is, but to be able to have a good list of solid referral partners, what comes around goes around, and to have courage and confidence to say, I'm not the best person for that, but these guys here, because that also means that you are top of mind as a resource. People can call you for more than just this one thing you do, but say, geez, Will always knows the right person. I'm calling Will. And that's a chance to say, hey, yep, you definitely want to talk to so-and-so about this thing. I got this email from somebody I hadn't heard from in a while. I said, what's that database for veteran businesses to list their products? I went, that's GoVets. Here you go. By the way, how are things with you? So the more reasons why somebody can feel they're gonna have a win. We do more of the things that lead us to success. We do more of those things that lead us to win, to feel that we're winning. And so that is the experience you want somebody to have every time they talk to you. And so the 3 sessions we've set up in February, March, and April, the first one, stand out by how you engage. The second one is really acing your industry outreach in those 15 magic minutes. And the topic for April is, what can I talk about without getting into trouble? I was thinking about this. I had tripped into fallen back in love with the Star Trek franchise because I was watching Star Trek Discovery, a completely new series. And the themes of that were coming up for me again. You think about the concept of the prime directive. And instead of being on Star Trek, in some ways, everything about government contracting, we're on FAR Trek. And if there's a prime directive in all of that, FAR 15.201 is it. It's about engagement with industry. If nothing else, mastering what that's about. What do the rules actually say and what do they mean for that person that you're talking to? When we work with Eileen Kent, one of my training partners, she will share this magical phrase, I just want to follow proper protocol. What's yours? How do things work in your office as opposed to, I'm a small business, I say you got to do business with me. No, not really. But say, gee, I've been reading about simplified acquisition. How does that work in your shop? Do you do that? It's not asking somebody to give you a training on simplified acquisition. You got to do the work and read the material first. So the concept of what can I ask at what stage? How can I not have a conversation shut down? How do I confirm that something I want to ask is appropriate? Is really the topic that is all about April, because you're getting to the point in April where you're generating opportunities, you're following up on things. And so we're going to be asking people to bring to the table situations where you're trying to have research conversations. You don't want to get the conversation shut down. So Kevin, what are a couple of the ideas for the ways that people can tread carefully and not screw up and not get the door slammed shut?
That's a great question, Judy, and it comes up a lot. Just as a basic rule, the closer you are to the acquisition, the less the dialogue can expand beyond what's actually been committed to paper. So the further out you are from a problem-solving opportunity, say 18 months to 2 years in the future, the more the dialogue is available to shape what that opportunity could look like. As decisions are made in the federal sector, there's less and less opportunity perhaps for those dialogues and for that decision to be changed. So we need to refocus when those conversations are taking place so that you're not trying to address an immediate problem with a lot of intense dialogue with a contracting official, but that you're looking at things that may be coming up in the pipeline, as we say, a year, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years in the future. And that's going to give you a better chance to have a more full dialogue associated with a particular acquisition, because once decisions start to get made, less and less information is going to be available to you, essentially. Right?
So I'm reminded of one of the lines from the libretto of Hamilton. I'm just like my country. I am young, scrappy, and hungry. Lots of government contractors. The idea of 18 months to wait till we win something is real nice, but we got to win something now. And that can often get really frustrating when someone starts with, oh, we just saw this thing and there's 30 days to go in SAM.gov. And well, one of the things that comes up frequently with folks that are in touch with me are, hey, I just heard about this thing and why won't anybody talk to me? And there's 30 days to go. And the answer is, guys, whatever you're talking about, it's not going to be that. What you found is a person to get to know. And now you've got to simply start a different conversation. But the one thing you can't talk about is that one thing on the street. Does that sound right, Will?
It's absolutely correct. You know, and you mentioned Star Trek. I'm also a Star Trek fan. And one of the things that I loved all the time is whenever there was in trouble or a danger, the first thing they would say, shields up. Okay. So shields up is really the moment when that's in the federal procurement strategy. That's when the conversation and the communications go down. Okay. It's shields up. That's because there is something working itself through the system that is high risk, but also high reward. So no one wants to take any actions that would infuse additional risk into the system, like talking to people about it. Okay, so if you're thinking about a procurement and you haven't done the things such that Kevin mentioned about going upstream early in terms of engagement and the opportunities to shape and capture, because that's actually a thing, okay? When you wait for it to show up on Beta Sam, it's done. That requirement is locked, okay? So from that standpoint, it is shields up from a conversation perspective. So if you want to talk about something else in this space, I would encourage you to do that. But you're absolutely going to get shields up if you start asking questions in the system while it's going through its formal source selection process, solicitation and source selection process.
Right. So how feasible is it? Is it realistic to take a step back and think about what it is that the product or service you offer, break that down into ideas for simplified acquisition or really low risk micro purchase, something small that somebody can do, a problem you can solve. You're not coming in saying, would you please give me a contract for, but you're shaping a conversation around something that could become a low risk way for somebody to see what you do. And that may at first be an idea for a training or a briefing or a lunch and learn, but to look at your ideas for those micro engagement steps that can lead to somebody getting comfortable that you do what you say you're going to do. You show up on time, you deliver value, you respect somebody's time, and you can show all of that in no dollar or low dollar environment so that the experience that you have in courting is the kind of experience that you might have when you're engaged. And so speaking of engagement, I also want you to, folks who are watching, to understand Come Together is a complimentary experience. It's free. So, and we're doing this for a couple of different reasons. First, we want to contribute to community. We want to be the rising tide that lifts all boats. We want all of the government contracting community to get a deeper understanding of how we all play together as federal humans and to be able to build relationships more easily, have more easy conversations, make that easier, make the human element easier. We, as you can tell, we just genuinely like people. All three of us talk to government contractors all the time, solving the small problems, helping break things down into small steps. And so our presentation of Come Together, our offer to you is also to build community. And each of us works with individual business owners. So it's a chance for us to get to know each other. And we may both want to follow up, you with us and us with you when we're done. The number one watchword for Come Together is my favorite word from the Star Trek series, and that's the moment of engage. You are engaged if there's that two-way conversation. You're engaged if somebody wants to talk to you again. So often the company that we're dealing with says, I just want to get a meeting. Well, great, you get the meeting and then nothing. That's frustrating. There's a concept I call how to win your meeting, and that happens on two levels. First, to win the attention of someone so they want to have that first meeting, but the big win is to get invited back. And I have a free half-hour training that's all about just that, how to win your meeting and get invited back. And so we've got links to that are on my social media and on my website. So Come Together, you register for each session individually. It's free. As you register, please add a question or a situation. We're going to be addressing your situations in real time and you'll have a chance to talk with each of us. At least 2 out of the 3 of us are going to be on each of these sessions. And so we're going to keep doing these to build connection, to give you the experience of what it's like to talk to a real contracting officer. Will and Kevin have both been in the chair. And so you can say, hey, could I say this? What about this? Why didn't this work? And this is your chance to get those things answered. You can't get that experience anywhere else. And that is what we're doing at Summit Insight to stand out. Our entire focus of my programs is all about that human connection that is really the spark that lights up everything else. And if you manage to master human connection and build the relationship, there anyone who's successful in federal contracting will tell you, and again, federal contracting is a relationship game. Come together is, as Will said, your chance to come into the gym, do your reps, do your practice, improve your form, and do it in a place where we're here to support you. I've had plenty of humiliating training experiences in a large IT company I'm not going to name. Kevin, I notice you and I are being very circumspect and just saying we worked for the big, large company, and you can look at our LinkedIn profiles and find that out if you want to. Go ahead. But one of my basic tenets is to provide support, to give people the support I always wanted when I was learning something difficult or scary or something I found challenging. To come into a space and say, there's something I do not know. I need help. And your federal buyer, you want to, it makes a big deal for them to be in the place where they're willing to come to you and say, there is something I'm struggling with. That when you get the conversation to the point where somebody's willing to say, I think I may have a problem, that takes a tremendous amount of trust for them to feel safe enough saying that in front of you. So how do you get a conversation to that point where they feel safe doing that? That's huge. And that conversation does not happen 30 days before the competition starts. So you want to be alert to what kinds of things are they talking about. Maybe the thing that somebody most needs is they need a dog sitter. Maybe the thing they most need is some kind of online class to give their teenager something that'll just make them feel a little less lonely. Who knows what it is? So being alert to those very, very human things is real huge. Guys, what are you looking forward to most about our Come Together series?
For me, Judy, it's not only serving, but to meet some dynamic government contractors, from the standpoint of people that have committed their lives and their business to their mission and their businesses, and then being able to help. So it's the service piece for me. It's introducing, being introduced, making connections, and then the ability to serve.
Wonderful. And you are working one-on-one with companies that are established companies. They've got the basics set up in SAM, and they're looking for an accelerated path to move toward first or second contract. Is that that's really a sweet spot for you?
Yes, I think that's my sweet spot. Is there's a lot of free resources out there to help you start. So I am not in the business of replicating what's already out there.
Yep.
It's that once you have all the stuff, it's like, okay, how do you then launch? How do you get that first contract? And then how do you scale into multiple contracts and multiple staff members?
So you're looking to build build relationships, have great experiences, meet people. How about you, Kevin? What are you looking forward to most about doing our series?
Sure, helping small businesses grow. I mean, that's kind of their goal, their problem, if you will, and maybe we can offer some solutions along those lines. I like to work between the pipeline and the proposal, if you will. Capture effort, the capabilities. What is your offering? However you find that. What do you need to do to put a point on that's going to resonate with a government contracting official? To pick up on one of your other thoughts, if you can recognize a problem and see it in the federal space, there's chances that same problem exists in other federal spaces. If you have that ability to solve that, and you can context it within the opportunity that may be in front of you, maybe there's a way I could help you, or maybe I could point you in a direction that would enable you to solve that problem in other agencies as well.
And Kevin, the particular expertise you have as well is doing the prime sub, the small company dance with the large prime dance, and you've got 15 years in that specific role. So the relationship with large primes and how to do that is a particular skill set you bring to the table. And at Summit Insight, we do one thing, and that is the Federal Business Intensive. I work with individual companies that are looking to build on their success in the federal market or make a strategic, effective entry into just the right place in the federal market. We do an 8-week private program, and part of that involves some private coaching on specific opportunities with one of our Top Gun coaches. That's Will or Kevin or a couple of others that we have, and we match you as part of our program with a coach that is going to take you a little deeper towards specific opportunity that is in your pipeline. So you can find out more about the Federal Business Intensive on summitinsight.com or growfedbiz.com. For now, we want you to show up, register for Come Together for one or all of February 10th, March 10th, or April 14th. And we'll see you there. Tell folks, bring your questions, and we wish you a tremendous, successful 2021. And we'll look forward to seeing you on our session. So guys, bring your friends, spread the word, and we'll see you there.
All the best. Take care.
Okay.
Take care. Good luck.